Welcome back, Samurai. My name's Takariva, and this is some more European Universalis 4 playing as Japan, where we're doing very well in preparation for our westernization, which might happen very freaking soon. Anyway, to come back to what I was talking about at the beginning, or at the end of last episode, I'm gonna go in speed 1 in the meantime, just to let it tick by a little bit. So, I was talking about how the Dutch, about the Koku Law, and how it countered the Catholic influence into Japan early on, and how the Dutch were the only ones allowed to trade with the Japanese, because they didn't want to convert the Japanese, they were there for the trade. That has been very typical of the way the Dutch colonized the world. Because people say, if the Dutch were all about pushing their people out, as some of the other colonizing powers would be, Dutch would have been the world language and not English, which I'm speaking right now instead of speaking Nederlands. So, what happened? Well, the Dutch, and to a certain degree the Portuguese. The Portuguese are a mix between the Dutch and the Spanish way of doing things. But the Dutch went for trade. They built outposts in many places. They were the one to found Cape Town in South Africa. They had outposts along the entire African coast. They had some outposts in India. In India was mostly the battleground of Portugal in the beginning, and then the Dutch and the Portuguese fought over them, and then the English came. Yet that's the story of the English, which I'm going to come to soon enough. So the Dutch were trading everywhere, and they really, really liked the Indonesia area because of all the spices and the exoticness surrounding them in Europe. That the 17th century, or was it the 18th? Anyway, one of the two is, I think it was the 18th, because the 17th was when we were still fighting to break free from Spain as a, they were oppressing us at the time. It also makes the Dutch the oldest anthem in the world. That's still in use, at least. Because it was written down during the War for Independence against Spain, the 100-Year War, as we know it here, at least. Good. We have our... Yes, there it is. You can now westernize. Oh boy. Am I clicking this button now? Okay, it's going up by +4 now. Interesting. 112 is dividable by 4, yeah. It's going to be really hard to time that one. Anyway, back to the story. So the Dutch were about to colonize, and the 18th century was our golden age, in which we had money coming out of our butts, basically. Not in the part of the Netherlands where I am right now, but in the north. It was just... That was when Amsterdam flourished like crazy. It had money. The painters, Rembrandt, most of the Dutch painters, except Van Gogh is actually probably the exception, but all the others you might know, like Rembrandt and Rubens. Rubens might have been Flemish, though. I'm not sure. But the famous Dutch painters all painted in the 18th century. And it's just... We had money because we, at the time, and adjusted for inflation, the Dutch East India Company, the Verenigde Oost-Indische Compagnie, or the VOC, adjusted for inflation, is the biggest corporation that has ever graced this world. Adjusted, it's about a net worth of $700 billion. I think the last time I saw it. It's like insanity. I mean, the English were like third with their East India Company, but yeah, that's... Spice business was booming business back then, that's for sure. Now, the Dutch set up trade posts everywhere, and they didn't really colonize. They went everywhere to trade. They had traders, they had native relations and such. It was okay. Now, the Spanish, and to a lesser degree the Portuguese as well, they were colonizing in the name of God. They had been both Portugal and Spain. That's with the Treaty of Tordesillas, as that has been put into the game as well as a mechanic. Spain and Portugal wanted to spread the word of God, that God is almighty and that he's the one that you should listen to. And they colonized basically everything. Basically, they drew a line about here. That line represented Portugal can have everything on the right side, and Spain can have everything on the left side. Of course, they didn't realize that that right side was not as big as that left side in the beginning, but hindsight is 2020. So Spain had basically all of this, all the western. So the right side here was Brazil, was Portuguese. The left side was Spanish. This was all Spanish. Spain went all the way up to here. And this was all Spanish as well. Almost everything was Spanish here. I mean, the Caribbean was just a melting pot of different nations taking it. And they just went there. They exploited the natives in a very harsh way. And they went there. A lot of the slaves that were brought over from Africa to work the plantations, because in the beginning it was sugar and coffee, then tobacco, and eventually cotton that were the cash crops. And Spain made money through plantations, cash crops, and through gold. They found a ton of gold in the Incan territories. I mean, there's Cerro de Potosi, which is also a natural wonder in Civilization 5. I mean, which one is it? Potosi. It's an insane gold mine. It's Cerro Rico, local goods produced, +3. The Rich Mountain, or Great Silver Mountain of Potosi, is the site of one of the richest silver mines in the world. Between 1575 and 1600, this mine alone accounted for half of the silver mined in the Americas. So yeah, Cerro de Potosi. That's how Spain became big in the early era of Europa Universalis 4. In the beginning, Spain was the world power. Actually, in the very beginning it was the Ottomans. Then Spain definitely took over from them. But the Ottomans started waning after their failed conquest of Cyprus. That's also a fun story. I might tell you one day if you remind me to tell it, because it's definitely not pertinent to this current thing. Okay, conquest cast a belly against the Arkand. Oh, they took Chengdu. That's not good for them. For the other one. But yeah, Spain made its money from gold, mostly, and from the cash crops with sugar, tobacco, and what else did I say? Coffee. And later on, cotton is actually already post-Industrial Revolution, mostly, when that changed over. I mean, that's American Civil War territory, pretty much, at that point already. Yeah, that's what Spain did. Spain made its money that way. Portugal is a mix between the way the Dutch did it and the way the Spanish did it. They did the native thing the same as the Spanish, but they were mostly in it for the trade as well. I mean, Goa is one of the most famous Portuguese trade ports in India ever, I guess. They eventually took a trade port here in... there's Macau. Yeah, Macau, Portuguese as well. And Hong Kong is actually on the other side of this bay and was taken by the British eventually. And they were leasing it. It's a weird construction that I have no more insight on personally. But yeah, that's the way Portugal, the Dutch, and the Spanish did. Now, for French and Great Britain, were mostly forced to take the north of America because Spain and Portugal took everything in the south, except for tiny bits up here. But the way they did it was also completely opposite of each other. The French and the British both went in to colonize with people. They wanted to make room for their people, which the Spanish didn't do. The Spanish conquered and subjugated mostly. The British sent people there that were on the one hand undesirable and the other hand could make money for them over there in the Americas. And they sent a lot compared to the others, like a ton. The French allowed people to go there if they were religious. Basically, Britain, the story of the Puritans, is one of... Ooh, that's actually good. I need to send my columnist though. The story of the Puritans is that they were sort of repressed in Britain, and they didn't want to stay there because they wanted to repress themselves. They wanted to have others to repress according to their religious laws. So they first fled to the Netherlands, which was reformed, but even there they were like, yeah, no. And they went to Plymouth in 1620. Which is not the first colony the British ever built there. Actually, they were first in the Virginia, Carolina area with plantations, actually. That was Jamestown or Roanoke, one of the two. I think Roanoke is the one that died off, and Jamestown is the one that actually managed to pull through in 1607. Now, the British sent everyone. The French only sent those deemed worthy. And eventually the British population spiked to about 4.5 million on the eastern seaboard around 1750, 1760. Then they had a big war with France, which ticked off the British living in North America. And then Britain lost the war. They did not lose a lot of... No, they didn't. They didn't actually lose the war. I think they won the war, but they had a lot of debt, and the king needed to repay the debt, and which forced I still need to send the colonists, which forced the king to start asking for more taxes, and that became a little bit too much for the Marshall Islands. It's another one, isn't it? This one is also colonizing. What are these guys doing? Oh, wow, this is actually the colony of this guy. What is happening? Just, am I... the America... Or, wow, this is just... Anyway. I'm just baffled by these. It's an interesting development, anyway. So yeah, the British sent over a lot of people, and it spiked, and eventually... They became pissed at their own king and decided that they only had to be independent. It was actually a French writer who came to the Americas, Thomas Paine. It's not Thomas might be a British name, but Paine was definitely a French last name. So when he wrote his I actually have that here somewhere. Oh my god. Where the hell did I put it? I cannot find it right now. I'm not actually... Where did I put that book? Hang on. Give me a second. I'm gonna find it. I'm just gonna let the game run a bit. I'm still here. You might just hear me a little bit less loud. Where the bloody balls are you? This book. It's a simple book, really. Where did I get a different... I can't even remember. I thought I had a book. Anyway. This is just... I'm like, yeah, I know I have this somewhere. And I have anthologies that also have it in it, but... I'm just trying to find it right now. That's just... Not being able to find it, if you can still hear me, is just annoying. I do like the music in this game, by the way. It's amazing. This one? No, that's something completely different. Yeah, I know, this makes for a really weird episode this way, but... yeah, I can't seem to find it right now. I thought I had it separately. Somewhere. It might be somewhere completely different, but... Anyway, I'll just get my anthology out then instead. Yeah, this is a freaking big book. The English Civil War. Okay, that just happened, I guess. Yeah, that's a book. It's right at the beginning as well somewhere, because it's... It's thin pages and everything. Bloody hell. Where is he? Thomas Paine. Thomas bloody Paine. Common Sense. That's the one. 324. Yeah, page 324 in a nearly 3,000 page anthology of American literature. I'm just saying. Studies, I know. Thomas Paine. Oh, he was born in England. Huh, okay, so I got that completely wrong. Did not come to America until he was 37 years old, which was when that was in 74. Yeah, so the rebellion was already looming when he came to the Americas, which is ridiculous. But until Common Sense by Thomas Paine, and mostly Thoughts on the Present State of American Affairs, until he wrote that, it was actually, the Americas were not even considering independence as much. They were just like, yeah, king, witness us. King senpai, notice us. It's any stupid meme of the current times. Senpai, notice us. And he did notice eventually when they started throwing the tea in the harbor. But, yeah. And the following pages offer nothing more than simple facts, plain arguments, and common sense, and have no other preliminaries to settle with the reader than that he will divest himself of prejudice and prepossession, and suffer his reason and his feelings to determine for themselves that he will put on, or rather that he will not put off, the true character of a man, and generously enlarge his views beyond the present day. Volumes have been written on the subject of this struggle between England and America. Men of all ranks have embarked in the controversy from different motives and with various designs, but all have been ineffectual, and the period of debate is closed. Arms as the last resource decide the contest. The appeal was the choice of the king, and the continent has accepted the challenge. It's basically Common Sense is about how it's stupid to think that after fighting a rebellion against your king that you can go back to him being your king, which is the whole point of another colony is finished. That's wonderful. Let's go to Salish. Yeah, it's just that's the way it was back then. I mean, but yeah, the thing is, the British went with lots of people, the French with less, which different styles of colonization, but also very pertinent is the difference in the way they treated the natives. The Spanish definitely subjugated and forced labored the natives, and actually exterminated some of them as well. I mean, blankets with disease. I mean, wow. The British forced them away. They didn't necessarily kill them if they could help it, but they forced them away. The French went to befriend and trade with them a lot more than the British and the Spanish did. Which is why most of the native tribes sided with the French in the war, in the 7-Year War between France and England, or Britain by that point actually. That put America on its path to independence proper. The French were fighting together with many of the native tribes. They were in league because the French were friendly to them and the English were not. Basically, the difference between the benevolent one and the overlord, and somewhere in between Britain. Yeah, the Dutch and the Portuguese were mostly trading with them anyway. They were like, yeah, money, we want money. Yeah. Anyway, if you enjoyed this history lesson, make sure to like this video, and there might be inconsistencies in my story here. I know most of it was from memory. I could also, if you're interested, sometime read something on this out of this anthology. I mean, I still have all my study associated books because I'm a sucker for having stuff. So I collected quite a wall of things, which is quite fun. It also has stories about everything. I mean, the beginning of the... Oh, this might be a fun one, actually, to end this off. I'll just keep it running. So, stories of the beginning of the world, which will, once I actually get there, page 17, the Iroquois creation story. Oh. The people known collectively as the Iroquois were made up of the Mohawk, Seneca, Oneida, Onondaga, and Cayuga nations. Joined in the early 18th century by the Tuscarora of North Carolina, the Five Nations became the Six Nations. The original Five Nations occupied lands that ranged from the area northeast of Lakes Ontario and Erie, around the St. Lawrence and Ottawa rivers, then south of the lakes and eastward to almost to the Hudson River. Named Iroquois by the French, the Dutch and English called all these people Mohawk, Makwa, or Seneca. The Six Nations called themselves People of the Longhouse, or the Haudenosaunee, in Seneca, or the Kaunosoni, in Mohawk. In reference to their primary type of dwelling, Iroquois longhouses were some 20 feet wide and from 40 to 200 feet long, accommodating several families who shared cooking fires. The largest towns of the Iroquois contained as many as 2,000 people. New generation of samurai. Give me your admin power then. Might as well. Anyway, that's just a brief introduction on the Iroquois. They created myth. The Iroquois creation myth exists in some 25 versions, the earliest of which was taken down by the Frenchman Gabriel Sagard in 1623 from the Huron, which is actually never... They were like the biggest rivals of the Iroquois, but okay. But yeah, it's the same area, so a lot of it is shared. Anyway, the Iroquois creation story. A tale of the foundation of the great island, now North America. The two infants born and the creation of the universe. Among the ancients there were two worlds in existence. The lower world was in great darkness, the possession of the great monster. But the upper world was inhabited by mankind, and there was a woman conceived and would have the twin born. When her travail drew near, and her situation seemed to produce a great distress on her mind, and she was induced by some of her relations to lay herself on a mattress which was prepared so as to gain refreshments to her wearied body. But while she was asleep, the very place sunk down towards the dark world. Okay, recall. We've cored. Just taking a check on the annexation progresses. Crap, I'm too late. But I can finish it, because it's only -3 penalty. Not Shu. Meow. He's coming back, so end of the month. The monsters of the Great Water were alarmed at her appearance of descending to the lower world. In consequence, all the species of the creatures were immediately collected into where it was expected she would fall. Wow, this is going slow. Yeah, annex vassal, please, go ahead. When would that be finished? January... Yeah, 1 month later, so it will take a couple of months longer. And if it's not enough yet, let's start a bloody westernization process as well. Black news indeed. Let's still no rebellion risk at all. Let's boost up to plus... Oh, it's only 55 for crying out loud, it's insane. Anyway... When the monsters were assembled and they made consultation, one of them was appointed in haste to search the great deep, in order to procure some earth, if it could be obtained. Accordingly, the monster descends, which succeeds and returns to the place. Another requisition was presented, who would be capable to secure the women from the terrors of the great water, but none was able to comply except a large turtle came forward and made proposal to them to endure her lasting weight, which was accepted. The woman was yet descending from a great distance. The turtle executes upon the spot, and a small quantity of earth was varnished on the back part of the turtle. The woman alights on the seat prepared, and she receives a satisfaction. While holding her, the turtle increased every moment and became a considerable island of earth, and apparently covered with small bushes. The woman remained in a state of unlimited darkness, and she was overtaken by a travail to which she was subject. While she was in the limits of distress, one of the infants in her womb was moved by an evil opinion, and was determined to pass out under the side of the parent's arm. And the other infant in vain endeavored to prevent his design. The woman was in a painful condition during the time of their disputes, and the infants entered the dark world by compulsion, and their parent expired in a few moments. They had the power of sustenance without a nurse, and remained in the dark regions. After a time the turtle increased to a great island, and the infants were grown up, and one of them possessed with a gentle disposition, and named Enigorio, in other words, with a good mind. The other youth possessed an insolence of character, and was named Enigonhatgia. In other words, the bad mind. The good mind was not contented to remain in a dark situation. Oh, good. That's cloth going up in price. To remain in a dark situation, and he was anxious to create a great light in the dark world. But the bad mind was desirous that the world should remain in a natural state. The good mind determines to prosecute his designs, and therefore commences the work of creation. At first he took the parent's head, the deceased by now, of which he created an orb, and established it in the center of the firmament, and it became of a very superior nature to bestow light to the new world, now the sun. And again he took the remnant of the body and formed another orb, which was inferior to the light, and was now the moon. In the orb a cloud of legs appeared to prove it was the body of the good mind, apparent. The former was to give light to the day, and the latter to the night. And he also created numerous spots of light, now stars. These were to regulate the days, nights, seasons, years, etc. Whenever the light extended to the dark world, the monsters were displeased and immediately concealed themselves in the deep places, lest they should be discovered by some human beings. The good mind continued the works of creation, and he formed numerous creeks and rivers on the great island, and then created numerous species of animals, of the smallest and the greatest, to inhabit the forests, and fishes of all kinds to inhabit the waters. When he had made the universe, he was in doubt respecting some being to possess the great island, and he formed two images of the dust of the ground in his own likeness, male and female, and by his breathing into their nostrils he gave them the living souls, and named them Iaguehau, in other words, the real people, or a real people. Oh, Chehalis, we're nearly there. Good. And he gave the great island all the animals of game for their maintenance, and he appointed thunder to water the earth by frequent rains, agreeable of the nature of the system. After this, the island became fruitful, and vegetation afforded the animals subsistence. The bad mind, while his brother was making the universe, went throughout the island and made numerous high mountains, and falls of water, and great steeps, and also created various reptiles which would be injurious to mankind. But the good mind restored the island to its former condition. The bad mind proceeded further in his motives, and he made two images of clay in the form of mankind, but while he was giving them existence, they became apes. Oh, seriously? We're insane now? I'll take the admirable. Why am I losing money? Oh, right, the advisors. Yeah, we're now paying 40 on advisors, for crying out loud. I'll just drop army maintenance a little bit, because we don't actually need it right now. How much would that be right now to tech up? Still quite a bit. We are progressing, so that's good. July 71. That's 17, 18-ish years. Good. Where was I? They became apes, and when he had not the power to create mankind, he was envious against his brother, and again he made two of clay. The good mind discovered his brother's contrivances, and aided in giving them living souls. It is said these had the most knowledge of good and evil. The good mind now accomplished the works of creation, notwithstanding the imaginations of the bad mind were continually evil, and he attempted to enclose all the animals of game in the earth, so as to deprive them from mankind. But the good mind released them from confinement. The animals were dispersed, and traces of them were made on the rocks near the cave where it was closed. The good mind experiences that his brother was at variance with the works of creation, and feels not disposed to favor any of his proceedings, but gives admonitions of his future state. Afterwards, the good mind requested his brother to accompany him, as he was proposed to inspect the game, etc., but when a short distance from their moninal residence, perhaps he meant nominal, might be... This is the annoying part. Reactionary in Mutsu. Is it that? Don't tell me that's on the frickin' mainland. I'm gonna be pissed off if it is. It probably is, but I can't... M-U-T-S-U. Oh, there it is. Mutsu. Unmultiple these bastards. There we go. Kinda have to do that. And of course increase maintenance again. The Batmind became so unmanly that he could not conduct his brother anymore. The Batmind offered a challenge to his brother and resolved that who gains the victory should govern the universe, and appointed a day to meet the contest. The Good Mind was willing to submit to the offer, and he enters the reconciliation with his brother, which he falsely mentions that by whipping with flags would destroy the temporal life, and he earnestly solicits his brother also to notice the instrument of death, which he manifestly relates to by the use of deer horns beating his body he would expire. And that made a lot of sense. On the day appointed, the engagement commenced, which lasted for 2 days. After pulling up the trees and mountains as the track of the terrible whirlwind, at last the Good Mind gained the victory by using the horns, as mentioned, the instrument of death, which he succeeded in deceiving his brother, and he crushed him in the earth. And the last words uttered from the Batmind were that he would have equal power of the souls of mankind after death, and he sinks down to eternal doom and became the evil spirits. After the tumult, the Good Mind repaired to the battleground and then visited the people and retires from the earth. So, basically, brothers created the world as we know it. If you found that interesting, people feel safe. That's cool. I would like to thank you all for watching. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe to the channel if you want to keep up to date in the future. I will see you guys later.